One strategy found to reduce our biases is it's called exposure and regular interaction with someone who belongs to that group.
Inclusion isn't a checklist. It's a choice. Every meeting, every moment, every Monday.
Hi, I'm Claude.
And I'm Jess.
We are corporate employees by day, entrepreneurs by night, and work besties for life.
Join us as we explore how work besties lift each other up, laugh through the chaos, and thrive together in every industry.
Work Besties!
Today, we're joined by Dr. Victoria Mattingly, aka Dr. V, a behavioral scientist who's helped leaders ditch performative allyship for real, measurable impact. Stay to the end here. What does it actually look like to be an ally in the moments that matter most? Dr. V, how did you came to be so focused on allyship?
I am an organizational psychologist, and when I started my PhD program, I was focused on emotional intelligence. How can we help people be better leaders, be more empathetic, be better communicators? During my academic training at a leadership development company, they were just getting started with their women in leadership practice. It was really focused around how do we solve the gender gap in leadership. And I got really involved working with the CEO because it was her passion project. If you look at most organizational hierarchies, the higher up you go, the less women there are. If we don't get men actively involved in these efforts, we're never going to make the type of progress. So the one in all the positions of power, and they've been sort of villainized as part of the problem. But what if we instead told them what they could do as part of the solution? And so I pitched that as my dissertation, and they went in for it. And it's still a commercial product they sell to this day. So I built this male executive training program to help men be better allies to advance women in leadership in the workplace, dig into what are the behaviors and the knowledge and the attitudes men need to be allies. And since then, I've definitely, branched out far beyond gender. Allyship is truly an intersectional approach to inclusion and diversity and all those good things. That's how I got started on this journey. I didn't know I was going to go that direction, but I got to really merge my training in learning and development with allyship and inclusive behaviors. And that's where I've lived ever since. And that was years ago now, which is wild.
Definitely opens up conversations that we have with work besties, because work besties can be across different genders and ages. One of the areas they are interested in is how do they become leaders and move up. So knowing your background and some of the experiences that you have, how has this overall shaped your mission?
Well, I've benefited from allies in a lot of ways. I'm a first generation college student. I needed allies to even get into college, to figure out how to live on my own. I had allies when I went to my university, people that gave me research opportunities and things that made me, set up for grad school. I had allies that helped me through the grad school process. I struggle with mental illness, and I've met so many mental health allies that have been there for me. Parenthood allies, like whenever I was the first woman to have a child in my graduate program, and there was no parental leave or maternal leave policy. There was no precedent for it. And I had so many allies. They got me a research assistantship instead of a teaching assistantship, so I could leave when he came, and I couldn't do that if I was teaching a class, right? So I've had so many allies in my life that have helped me get to where I am. And I also see the value I can bring as someone who wants to be an ally as well, and think about the individuals and groups that I can serve, people who are different than me, so I can leverage. I'm a straight white woman with a degree and I have all these privileges. Why not try to use those for good rather than just sitting on my pile of privileges and looking down at others?
They have that pay it forward mentality.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things that we've been hearing from those that are in this area of expertise is that people still feel uncomfortable talking about inclusion.
Yes, I think it goes back to the definition of inclusion, which are the behaviors that make others feel valued, respected, seen, and heard. I think inclusion is one of the topics people are least uncomfortable talking about. We want to be treated in such a way that makes us feel valued, respected, seen, and heard. I think people struggle talking about diversity, especially people in majority privileged groups don't like having their identity pointed out. There isn't a white culture. Male culture just is culture. That's why we have those affinity groups and why you don't see a white affinity group. I think people are uncomfortable and we don't have the skill. This is like a skill set, cultural competence, having a diversity perspective and awareness. This is a skill set that no one's being taught. And we've been convinced to believe that we just like fit into these groups and there's good groups and there's bad groups and it's one or the other and it's a zero-sum game. And that's just not the truth. If we work together, we can get so much more accomplished than we ever could divided. So I think diversity is hard for people. Equity is really hard for people.
How do you put it back into the map? Because there's still a lot of work to be done. At the end of the day, it's the wording. How can we get away from talking equity, but still doing the work that is needed to be done?
That's exactly what's happening right now. There were a lot of people doing DEI work over the last 6 years. Those people didn't just disappear. Their roles did and the titles did, but going into people, operations, HR, leadership, an HRBP, HR business partner, you could be doing lots of what is DEI work just by doing your job, but you're making sure that just as many women are being interviewed as men. You're asking those types of questions and you're in a position to do something about it. I've heard anecdotes, people who were in formal DEI roles are now in like HRBP roles. And they're like, we do more DEI work now than we ever did in the DEI role. We're just going to hire this person and say, yep, we solved DEI because we hired this person. That's not how it works.
That's the issue. This misconception about what really DEI is. And I think that there's misconception of what really is the equity and inclusion.
I have rephrased it for myself. I call myself a workplace inclusion expert, or I'll say workplace inclusion and allyship. I don't really use DEI anymore. And I had a very different stance on that like 6 months, 9 months ago. I was very much like, no, this is our field. No one's going to tell lawyers or doctors to change the name of their field. This is what I've been doing for almost a decade. I know the importance of language. You need to be able to call something so people know what it is, right? We can't keep changing the name. But it's become, even just more the acronym than the actual 3 words, it's become so villainized. It's become a scapegoat. And I've had people call me racist and sexist. It's flipped on its head. People are really angry and they feel left out and they feel like DEI means giving people from underrepresented groups a leg up. And in actuality, it's just trying to level the playing field. That's it. And the point I really wish we could get across is this is going to benefit you if and when that tilts. I always say I'll be the first one on the front lines the day there's far more women in leadership roles than men. Because it should be close to 50-50. Should be. That's what makes the world a good place, having that diversity of gender, that's important. I'm not saying women should take over. I'm just saying we should get to parity.
I heard you, Dr. V, say previous TED Talk or DEI wasn't just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing. What exactly did you mean by that?
There's a lot of data out there that show the positive business impact that DEI has on the bottom line. So even thinking from a talent standpoint, being able to retain talent, people are getting value from being involved in DEI efforts or an employee resource group or having that part of themselves seen and taken care of. People are going to stay around longer. You're going to recruit top talent. You're going to keep them. Also, there's a lot of research that shows that diversity is really beneficial to innovation. So if you're in a field where you need to be innovative and creating new things and thinking outside the box, that's how we think outside the box, being in a room with people who aren't like us. Honestly, there's so much untapped talent in certain demographic groups. I'm thinking particularly women of color, looking at the education rates. People should be sought out for their diversity, and it's being held against them. Traction to an organization, shareholders care, stakeholders care, customers care. People want to spend their money with companies that align with their values. DEI done right is a good way of demonstrating, hey, we care about people for who they are at this organization. And that just is good for business. There's actually a lot happening right now. It's been going on for about a year or two in the Society for Human Resource Management. And they've wiped DEI out of all of their language, their certifications, their conferences. They're watering that down a lot more. And they definitely don't talk about equity because equity is calling out things are already not balanced. They're not fair as they presently stand. People don't want to admit that. People want to think we've had a Black president, like women work and we are making good money and like everything's fixed, but it's not fixed. You have to acknowledge that it's not right. There's an imbalance, and you do something to fix the imbalance, which inherently doesn't benefit the current group that's being benefited, and people get angry. So I think inclusion is easier to talk about, diversity harder, and equity is just a dialogue explosion.
It's interesting to me. We're very supportive of DEI and what that means. So when you think about corporate culture and organizations, having someone, whether that's their sole focus or it's integrated, which I feel like might even be the bigger opportunity, should be layered across every position versus just a defined position. What's your thoughts on that? Or do you feel there needs to be a defined position for it?
The beauty of allyship and my own agenda with it is I did some research on what actually reduces our unconscious bias. And it's not unconscious bias training. Unconscious bias training is great for us to be aware and how to not let our biases impact our behaviors or our decision making, right? But it doesn't actually reduce the bias that you have towards whatever group you have it. The one strategy that's been found to actually reduce our biases it's called exposure. It's having a regular interaction or building a relationship with someone who belongs to that group. So if I have a bias against women leaders, I'm going to hang out with a bunch of women leaders or make a really good relationship with one, right? And learn well, this person doesn't do this or that. It starts chiseling away at that because it's unconscious, and we can't change our unconscious. It has to be done through rewiring our brain, and to have an example and a model of someone who's not fitting in that stereotype starts chiseling that away. So that's my agenda with allyship. I'm all about people being mentors and sponsors and advocates and cheerleaders and coaches and guides. But it's not an ally if that person is the same as you. It's not an ally if you're not actively working across some difference. Because the thing about allyship, you have to have that power, that privilege, that status to be able to lend that to the person. So if you belong to all the same groups, there's not that opportunity to realign things that an ally and a partner can do. So I think that's really an important distinction with allyship, what makes it special compared to just being a good human to someone else.
Yeah. I feel like you've just flipped the script on recommendations or ideas for work besties as you are thinking about having a mentor. Because we all gravitate to somebody we either have some type of connection or already know, but in the way to really push yourself would be to find somebody completely out of your scope.
I'm a member. Yeah, I'm a member of an organization called Blacks in IO Psychology, Industrial Organizational Psychology. And I joined them right around 2020, 2021, when everything was happening. Because I wanted to do something involved in a way that's meaningful and purposeful. And I'm very involved in the IO psychology community. But the reason I joined is they had an ally membership, which was amazing because I didn't have to second guess, do I belong here? Should I be here? I don't want to overstep my boundaries. And so the fact I'm an ally member has been just so wonderful. But I bring it up because I just did their mentorship program, and I had this amazing mentee, and we're still going to keep in touch. She's on the market right now. She is a Black woman. I am not. Was there something about that made it even better? I don't know, but I don't have a comparison, so I couldn't assess that.
With any mentor-mentee relationship, you get out of it just what you give too, right? So I'm sure if you feel it, then probably it's true.
I had a question. How do we win over leaders who see DI as optics and not a strategy?
One thing that came out of this DEI backlash that we've experienced over the last year or so is that now it truly is a competitive advantage. Something can't be a competitive advantage if everyone's doing it. And for a while, everyone was doing it, right? So now it's more about, do you want this competitive advantage or not? We have a finite number of marbles, where are you going to put your marbles? And if they could see that would be a good ROI, a good benefit. And I truly believe leaders have to have some sort of values and alignment with DEI. That's not something you can teach or change. Maybe over time, or maybe through a pivotal moment that happened. But I would argue the ones that you just can't convince, that's just a loss for them. Whenever my business was at its height, our marketing strategy was very much inbound marketing. So let's just put as much content out there as possible. Let's write the book, and then people came to us because that's the litmus test. Because DEI work is so hard. You have to be so committed to it, get it to work. I wanted them to seek us out. So I knew they were committed enough to even do that. I never hard sell DEI. I think the people who are inclined to have that values alignment and see it as a competitive advantage, I don't think sharing data broadly or research broadly is helpful because people want to know, especially leaders, well, how would it play out here? And so whatever you can do to try to show data or a case study or a story about how it could play out in that organization, I think that would be more compelling than just oh, here's all this research, because they just don't care. They don't care.
Yeah, Dr. V,
yes.
You've written a book. Do you want to share some details about the book?
My second book came out this year. It's called Act Like an Ally, Work with an Ally. It was actually supposed to be my first book, but when me and my then business partner decided to write a book, it was 2021. And at that moment, allyship didn't feel appropriate. Allyship is a more later stage DEI strategy. You have to have the foundational pieces in place for allyship to work. And in that moment, there are all these new DEI functions and leaders and roles just popping up all over the place. And, as an organizational psychologist, I was what can we do as IO psychologists to contribute to the space right now and establish ourselves as credible thought leaders and experts, in this world? The answer was data-driven DEI. If we're going to build a DEI function or employee resource group, how do we decide which resource groups to start first? Well, take a survey, see who raises their hand, see what the need is, right? What groups are you dealing with? Who's even in your organization? Do you even know the answer to that? The book had great reception. It really was a resource that people use, not just even in organizations, but in the classroom as well, which was an unexpected surprise. A lot of professors picked it up. It's a secondary text, So that was our first book. And in the preface, it says, this was not supposed to be our first book. Our first book was on allyship, right? So this is that book. It's a continuation of my dissertation work that I mentioned earlier. But as I said, taking a far more intersectional take on allyship. I try to have stories from as many different identity groups as possible throughout the book. The thing that always bothered me with the training that I did for my dissertation was that I gave these male executives all these tools and ideas and, prompts to be better allies to women in the workplace. But imagine you're Susan and you've been Joe's executive assistant for 10 years. Joe comes in one day and goes, Susan, I'm ready to help you grow your career. I want to be your mentor and your sponsor and your cheerleader. Susan's I worked for you for 10 years, Joe. Where is this coming from? So this book is for Susan. The other side of allyship. So it's for both sides. The Act Like an Ally side, that book is out there. There's lots of great books on how to be a good ally, but I would have done a disservice if I didn't include that side of the story. But the other book, when you literally flip it over, is Work with an Ally. And that's for what I call the partner, the recipient of allyship, the person who benefits from allyship. Because if allyship truly is a two-sided relationship, both parties need to know what to do to make the most out of that relationship. And I remember one of my allies years ago said to me once, he's the only reason I invest all this time in you is because you actually go do something with it. I get to see what you do with it. You're actually going places. And that always stuck with me. What else can I do to be a good partner in allyship? And how can I help others do the same?
That's incredible. I love this idea of the book, of having two books. One is about being an ally and the other one is being the recipient. It's really, really different. And you can see both ways.
I like how it's a real visceral experience.
Right.
And even I reference the book. So in the partner book, I'll say, hey, I'm telling allies on page A42 to be courageous. So give them something courageous to do. And I want them to flip the book over and be where's A42? What's she saying to allies on that page? And then you're flipping it back and forth. And then when you get to the middle, it says, They just might end up being an ally to you, and you flip it over. You just might end up being an ally to them, because the middle is actually the end of both books, but it gives you that incentive to like, oh, maybe I should read the other book as well.
It's a choose your own adventure.
A little kitschy, but I think it really demonstrates the core principle of the book is, we need to do this work together. We need to know what we need to bring to the table, and we need to know both sides of the story to make it happen.
But your take on it, which is fascinating, the fact that you're showing both sides of the equation, both understand what the role is of the opposites. When they're coming at it, they can think more holistically versus just here's what I'm bringing to the table.
It's exactly why I made it 2 books in one. It brings that point home, because I could have easily just had 2 separate books and just launched them at the same time, but it would lose that knowledge and awareness of, the other person. And chances are you're going to be in that role. Like, I think about my former business partner, she's a Black woman. So people look at us and think, oh, Dr. V is the ally, she's the white woman. And which is true when I can be, but she's been my motherhood ally. She was my grievance ally when my father passed away. She was my cancer ally when I had cancer. She's my mental health ally. She's been my ally in so many other capacities. And I think we work together so well is because we know how to play both of those roles as well as we can.
You could be an ally for anything. There's so many things we're all facing and challenged with, and having somebody support you, it's critical. And it's not something any of us as humans are good about asking. The part that I love about this book is, even if you are an ally for somebody else, you don't always recognize when somebody needs an ally. So reading the reverse would help with that too. I have a couple of questions about your first book, just because I'm a data-driven girly. So for those who haven't read that book, please do. It's called Inclusilytics.
Nailed it.
One thing that came to mind for me when I was thinking about it from the work bestie perspective is, how can people at the mid-level help with these inclusivity elements that you were sharing?
Expected, seen, and heard. The tricky thing about inclusion is that that's going to vary. What makes Claude feel included could look very different from Jess, could look very different from me, right? So really taking the time to learn about particularly your direct reports, you have that power over, and the allyship really gets at that power piece, and learning what does ensure people's voices feel heard, and how do I make sure people can show up as the person they want to be, and they feel like I value their work and I respect them as a human. And it takes that extra step to, really get to know each person. And it doesn't have to be a huge thing either. It could be very simple in a quarterly meeting or in the first meeting. How do you like to be recognized? What does motivate you? What's your preferred communication style? Emails, meetings, little things, but they all add up. I think we get hung up that we think inclusion is always this huge gesture, and sometimes it is, but a lot of times it's actually just small things that we can do to make someone feel seen or appreciated on the other side.
But shouldn't a manager do anyway? No matter, right? Like trying to understand understanding your employees, how they like to be recognized. And because we all know, like whoever did some manager training, people, they like something different from the others. I think a good manager in general have to learn that, and they have to be present for everybody.
I've said this before, but good leadership is inclusive leadership. It's not new. The one lens to put on top of just being a good leader is the diversity piece. And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. And I think that's the part that people are most squeamish with. But like, a truly inclusive leader acknowledges that the differences on my team make my team stronger. And I need to make sure that we continue having that diversity moving forward. It's acknowledging that things aren't fair and equal, and it's our role as leaders to try to fix that however we can. Social media and copywriting and marketing, and I needed someone to help me do that for Mattingly Solutions, my company, and she just jumped right in, and it was a really great experience. And it's ironic, my first business partner was a good friend, like a 25-year friendship, very good friend, and that did not turn out well. Did not. Some people were like, you are just out of this world for working with a friend again after you got so burned. Nikki's not like that. She's my bestie. So we worked together, I want to say for about a year and a half. I've had to downsize, so we're not working together right now.
You were an ally for her.
It sounds like it strengthened your relationship.
Oh yes, absolutely. And we still talk almost every day because we both work from home, and I'll take my daily walk and I'll give her a call. I know I'm not done working in corporate type of environments yet, and I am excited if and when I get that next job to have a work bestie. And yeah, for sure.
It makes a whole difference.
It really does. You just chat on Slack, or you go grab lunch, or you dish, or you complain, or whatever. It's so important to have the emotional outlet, social outlet.
Yeah. It's that one person that you can go to and say anything and not have to worry about the filter. Dr. V, how can people find your work, whether it's your books, your courses, your coaching, or even some of the speeches that I've seen of yours that are amazing?
Check out my website, mattinglysolutions.com. mattinglysolutions.com/allyship has all the info about the book, how you can order it, resources. And I'm also really engaged on LinkedIn. So it's just Victoria Mattingly on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect and send me a note. And I love meeting new people, and I love getting the word out about the book. I truly believe allyship could be the next iteration of DEI. Like DEI as we knew it 4 or 5 years ago is no longer, but it's good business, it's good leadership to be inclusive, to have allies, right? And so this work's going to continue. It needs to involve everyone. And I don't think that was done right the first time, quite honestly. And everyone has a role to play, whatever identity you sit in. And I think allyship could really be that next iteration of DEI.
One last question we wanted to ask you. What does it actually look like to be an ally in the moments that matter most?
I want to clarify that moments that matter most don't necessarily need to be big moments or dangerous moments or risky moments, right? Although it's very important to stand up for others if you see discrimination or racism or sexism happening, absolutely. But I think allyship is more likely to happen in these subtle interactions we could have with others. And so I think that's really how one shows up day to day as an ally, is recognizing what privileges do I hold at this moment, and how can I reach across difference to bring someone else along by leveraging that, So you have to first identify what privileges you hold, and that's an uncomfortable exercise in and of itself, right? So that's necessary self-work. But once you identify and own it and start flipping the script of this is not something I should be ashamed of. This is something that I can use to help others and make the world a better place. And then just being aware and recognizing when those opportunities present themselves, and then do whatever it is. And sometimes you'll get it wrong, and that's fine too. At least you tried. At the end of the day, it's the best we can do. So that's my answer to the big question.
Dr. V, you've brought such amazing data, compassion, heart, and really helped drive this conversation around allyship. Allyship's not about perfection, it's practice. If this episode's resonated, please share it with your team, your workplace, your boss.
Until next time, have a good week. Bye.
Remember, whether you're swapping snacks in the break room, rescuing each other from endless meetings, or just sending that perfectly timed meme, having a work bestie is like having your own personal hype squad.
So keep lifting each other up, laughing through the chaos, and of course, thriving. Until next time, stay positive, stay productive, and don't forget to keep supporting each other.